helping you with Acorn and RISC computing.
Hello, I'm Steve Revill from RISC Open, and I'm very happy to be here in Bradford for the show, the Wakefield show in Bradford. And it says here I have 32 slides, and if I average about 2 minutes a slide, we should be done in just over an hour. What I would like to ask is, can we save questions to the end, and then I'll kind of run through this and open the floor to questions. So there's only really one topic I wanted to talk about today, although I'll squeeze a little bit in at the end. But so primarily, I'm here to talk about RISC-OS 5.30, which is the latest stable release of RISC-OS. And I have been at RISC-OS talks for quite some time now, lots of different shows saying about it's just round the corner, and now finally I can say it's out, it's been released. So the press release went out on our website today at about midday, and I'm just going to talk you through why I'm so pleased to be able to say that we've launched this today. So what is in RISC-OS 5.30? It is a new version of the operating system, and it's a new version of all the software that comes with the operating system, and it has been released for nearly all of the supported platforms that RISC-OS currently runs on. And you can see here our little traffic light system of how we rate whether a platform is deemed stable or not. So we have 7 of the 9 have been released today. We've been keeping a close eye on IMX6 and Pine A64 ports for quite a long time, but we still have too many open issues with those that aren't being resolved. So we have chosen not to declare those as stable, although on those particular platforms there may be other routes through which the OS releases are rolled out anyway. For everyone else, we're now happy to say that those releases are stable. All of the main issues that we'd identified with them have been closed. But one thing that we have observed is we might change this system. For the next stable release, we might move away from this traffic light system because it does feel a bit negative to paint a couple of ports as being red and not stable. It's not quite true. It's just about who's maintaining them and how they're being maintained. So we might have a slightly different system in the future. So some of the things that are worth noting is the bounty schemes have been running throughout all of the roll-up to this, and we have had 6 different bounties that have either contributed into this or were closed and completely incorporated into this. And I think that shows that all of the support we get from the community with sponsoring the bounties and putting the money into the bounties in the first place actually does yield tangible benefits down the road. So that's great to see. And we've got, in the main OS, we've got over 300 changes and another more than 300 on all the disk-based side of RISC-OS. And we've also squashed a whole load of bugs since 5.28. You can see there 76 bugs fixed. And in addition to that, there were 7 fairly serious security issues resolved. Now, one of the programs that a lot of people use all the time is Paint. That did get a lot of improvements due to a bounty and elsewhere. And you can see here we can export as PNG and JPEG, as well as just saving as sprite files. My favorite bug of all time at RISC-OS has unfortunately been fixed now, so it doesn't crash when you try to use a sprite as a brush, which I will miss because that used to be my favorite reminder of the bug that no one ever fixed. And we've got a slider now so you can control opacity, so you can make transparent and semi-transparent sprites. And you can also change the resolution of your images on the fly. We've also increased the maximum resolution of images in Paint. I do have a video, but I'm going to skip over it just because I have shown it at a previous show, and we're going to put this stuff on our website afterwards. So in the interests of time, I'm just going to skip over this and just tell you a few other bits and pieces that, well, you can see here. We've already talked about the ping support. This is very useful if you want to create images that you share with people who don't have a RISC-OS-based computer, or if you want to work with images that people have sent you or that you've downloaded from the internet. Quite often there will be ping or JPEG formats. There is a very technical slide now for all the people who are interested in stuff about memory management, and I'm going to skip straight past that as well. One thing we have done is we've reorganized what is stored on the disk, the way the system boots and the way the filer views the disk. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to try and, for certain groups of users, give them the option to hide away some of the important system files and folders and make them so that they're not actually visible in the filer at all. And that way you can't accidentally clobber them or delete them or rename them or something like that. So we made some changes related to that. And we've also given the option that some of the bits that were hidden away inside the boot application can be moved outside of that into the main disk image. And there's a few benefits for that. In the future, it will make it easier to support multiple users and having separate users on the system. And the other thing is it will make it easier to have more automated updates in the future where we can roll out an updater that takes you from one version of the OS to another without clobbering stuff it's not supposed to be clobbering. So these are some of the changes. I will show you a little bit here, hopefully. An example of what this looks like in practice. So you can see this is what most people will have seen forever on RISC OS. If you go to configure, there is a new option here in the filer settings where you can hide the system application directories. As soon as you set that option, you'll notice top left, they've all vanished. They're still all there, and if you went in the command line and looked around, you'd see they're still all just there. They're just hidden. So if you accidentally try and copy stuff to there, it will tell you, actually, no, you're not allowed to do that. You'll damage a system directory that's protected. So that's just to help avoid users making mistakes that damage their system and stop it from working anymore. Next up, there's some features that we've changed to allow better theming of the desktop to make it look different. So as people make use of these features, we'll get more theme packs being released from the community, from developers in the community, that allow you to just make your experience look different in RISC OS. One of which is we've changed the icon bar so you can have a background, which can even be a semi-transparent background, and you can get rid of the black border that was always there around the icon bar, so it makes it more seamlessly blend into your backdrop. And you can also theme buttons and shadows and things like that in Windows. So people can make use of these features now. There's been quite a lot of work, again, related to Bounty work, on the network stack and networking in general. So we can now support up to gigabit Ethernet network cards via USB connection. And there's been quite a lot of updates to the network stack, bringing it more into today and out of the 90s. There's quite a lot more work to do on that front, but it's sufficiently far advanced that we're happy to call this stable and release it with 5.3.0. On a related note, there was a bounty that was split into multiple bounties because it was so big and complicated. We're now on to the third stage of that, and that has made sufficient progress that it has unlocked the ability to add Wi-Fi support. So that's now on all of the Raspberry Pi, pretty much all of the Raspberry Pi platforms that have built-in Wi-Fi. You can now just get Wi-Fi, and thanks to LSR, who developed this user interface for controlling it. He was previously, or still sells, a plug-in Wi-Fi adapter for Raspberry Pi, and he wrote that software as the user interface for that. But now we've developed Wi-Fi natively in RISC OS. He has contributed that user interface. So that's now released as part of the RISC-OS 4 disk image. So you get this when you download RISC-OS 4. And I think for most people, this is something they've probably wanted since the beginning of RISC-OS on the Raspberry Pi. There's a few performance improvements as well. So there's a module called VFP support, and that makes use of some parts of the processor in modern chips. Anything post-ionics, pretty much, will have a vector floating point unit. And that means rather than software having to do maths the hard way, it can just call that piece of dedicated hardware and do difficult computations. And typically that makes a massive boost for programs that make heavy use of these types of maths functions here. For example, this fractal drawing program was about 2,000% faster, so 20 times faster. Maestro, RISC-OS's native resident music editing software, has had a number of different improvements. This was also related to a bounty, and certainly we've had some great support from the community with this as well. So in particular, Chris Newman contributed quite heavily to the documentation in the user guide related to Maestro, and has made that whole thing more up to date and more accessible. So if you want to get into playing with this and learning how it works, it's a lot more approachable now by just looking at the documentation in the user guide. Another huge addition that I'm very pleased with is we worked quite a lot with David Pilling to help him open source SparkFS. And SparkFS, I remember starting to use this in the 90s. It was an essential, always running part of the operating system as far as I was concerned. And if you ever work with things like zip files, it is the piece of software you use on RISC-OS. It is now released as open source, and we have built this into the disk image as well, so it comes with RISC-OS 4 out of the box now. We also have a little backlog of ideas for the enhancements we want to do to SparkFS over time, and the good thing is, because it's open source, anyone can come along and start making those improvements to it now. We're not beholden on waiting till David has some time to turn his attention back to SparkFS anymore. So that's one of the huge benefits of open source. There have been improvements in the back end of how printing via PostScript works. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but all I will say is if you generate PDFs on RISC-OS, for example, Steve Fryatt has an application called Print PDF. All of the stuff back in the system that helps generate the PostScript files that feed into that process have had a number of significant improvements, primarily related to color handling. So you will generate better PDFs, you will generate better printouts due to these changes. Now, there's a few things that are big wins as well in terms of the platforms. So we now finally support OMAP 5. So for RISC-OS 5.2.8 stable, the OMAP 5 just slightly missed the boat because there was one outstanding bug that stopped us from calling it a stable release. And it was unfortunate the person who was maintaining that, it worked fine for them. And then when we tried it on other monitors, that's where we saw problems. So this particular bug meant that when we went around an office and tried plugging into all the different monitors in an office, we found that quite a high failure rate where they were just blank screens. But we figured out what that was with the developers' support, and because that bug has been clobbered and a few other bits and pieces, it now means it is a Pucker stable release and has joined the group for 5.3.0. And we also, I've mentioned it earlier, but we have included 6 bounties in this. And we had to add another bullet point about that bug. I'll stop talking about that bug for no other talk. I will ever talk about it again. One of the highlights is this is a huge community contribution. It's a kind of a team event updating the user guide for every stable release. And this is at the heart of one of the things that I think makes RISC-OS really good and such a great operating system to learn and play with is you're not relying on a wiki of semi-maintained documentation that's somewhat out of date and you never quite know where you stand. You've got an actual published book or downloadable for free PDF of that book that describes everything from getting started with the operating system through to using every single application that comes in the disk image with that operating system. And so we've had a lot of work done on that to incorporate, you can imagine a lot of things have changed, and incorporate all of the updates related to that. And we have it on our stand today for the princely sum of £20. And again, you can download it for free as a PDF as well. So one thing to observe, this took a lot longer than expected. As I said, I've been talking about this at a number of shows, thinking it was a few months away. It turns out corralling all of the different developers and maintainers of platforms is difficult, and getting, for many people, it's not their full-time job to work on RISC OS. So if you come to them with a pile of bugs, you can't expect them to be finished very quickly quite often. So it has been difficult. There's been a lot of challenges, and I think it has sometimes led to the perception that Rule is the team of people that go and fix all the bugs and make the releases stable, whereas actually we're just the coordinators, and when people create a new platform or port to a new platform, it's the people who did that or the people who maintain it who are looking after fixing bugs. And we're just trying to bring things to their attention, help them prioritize, help them decide what order to do things in. So RISC OS really doesn't have the capacity to be the people that make the stable releases. We just coordinate it and try to keep a cadence of them happening. So I just wanted to make sure that we've at least made people aware that that's how we organize things. And the upgrade, as I said, is not particularly straightforward right now. So it's semi-technical or it's semi-risky. So you can easily break your whole system, and so you're in an unbootable state if you're not careful. So what we would like to do is move to a world where we can just say, right, just go here, click on this, say upgrade, say, are you sure? Yes. And then if things go wrong, would you like to roll back? Yes, please. And then get back to where you were. So we'd like to have some sort of system like that for the next stable release, so that we're not still in the world where you have to copy all these things out of a zip file, carefully piece all the different bits together in your boot sequence without clobbering all your settings. So there's some work to do there, and we're looking forward to doing that for the next stable release. But unfortunately not for 5.3.0. You've still got the old way. And a little bit behind the scenes, I just want to talk about what we do when we're working our way towards a stable release. So we're constantly reviewing how RISC OS, the latest beta version, the unstable, odd-numbered version, how well it's working on different platforms. We're hoovering up the issues that people are talking about in the forum. We're looking at what's put in our bug tracker, and we're trying it out ourselves on different systems. And every time we find any issue, we try and make it, bring it to the attention of the people who maintain the platform. We also pull them all together into release candidates and periodically publish release candidates for people to play with in the community and give us their feedback. And we also pull all the feedback together for the user guide as well. And there's quite a lot of work that goes behind the scenes, as you can imagine. Pulling together a whole book, it's a lot more work than just maintaining a wiki. Creating the presentations and videos is fairly self-evident. And there's a load of little notes all over the place. If you download anything, there's going to be updated notes that talk about what it is. And all of this, we try and make sure that we've got some record of what's changed when. So we've got an audit trail of how we went from 5.2.8 to 5.3.0. And that's quite a lot of work behind the scenes, and it's great. Probably not very much of it was me, actually. A lot of it was other RISC Open volunteers. So thank you to them. And then, of course, you've got all the developers who did all the work of fixing the bugs, implementing the bounties, adding the new features. And so a huge debt of gratitude to them as well, because, of course, they're not getting paid for that. The bounties might compensate some of them, but there's a lot of work happening that's outside of the bounty scheme, and it's just done out of the goodness of people's hearts. So where do we want to go next? I'll look quickly at our bounty scheme. So there are 7 currently underway, and the USB bounty has started. So what's happened with that one, which I know a lot of people are quite interested in, is that we had one person, a developer, came along and said they would like to partially claim this bounty because there was a certain piece of it that they felt very capable of doing and they were interested in doing. So we said, of course, we're not going to turn away a developer. And they have done their piece. So now we've split the bounty up into a piece that they've done, and then the remainder we're looking for the next developer to finish it off. So it's about 1/3 of the way there, and we're looking for the developer for the other 2/3. And we have a few people in the frame for that, one of whom was at this show. So we have some ideas, and we're planning on that moving forwards very soon. The Git client has been making amazing progress. I'm really pleased with how that's been coming on. And anyone who's a developer should be equally pleased and excited about the progress there. There's definitely some stretch goals being hit beyond just the original goals. And then there's the work towards having partition support in the filing system. So if you've got a big disk, you can partition it so it looks like you've got several different drives, all of different sizes. And we do want to bring the programmer's reference manuals up to date, which is a monster job. And there's a few other bits and pieces. And then there's some other bounties that we've got open just to collect towards a target. One of them is actually slightly over what we thought the target would be, but that doesn't necessarily automatically mean someone's going to claim it. These targets are always just a guideline of if you paid someone minimum wage and we think it's about this many hours, then that's what the target will be. To a developer who's volunteering to get involved in this stuff, they might have a different idea of where they need the bounty to reach before they'll claim it. But you can see there we've got further network-related stuff, file system-related stuff. There's things about bringing all the features from RISC OS 4/6 toolbox modules into RISC OS 5's toolbox modules. And we've got some other bits about Unicode support there. One thing I would say is, as we close off some of the bounties, we don't want to have too many open at any one time because it will dilute where people are putting the money into the bounty scheme and you end up with none of them collecting very much. So we do kind of throttle how many we've got open at any given moment. But as some of the underway bounties start to close, it'll bring up spaces to open some new ones. And I was having a conversation with someone earlier today about something that they're very interested in seeing done. And my advice is raise it on the forums and try and galvanize some backing and support in the community. And if a lot of people show an interest, then it kind of raises it up, its profile. And we typically, when we're looking at the next bounty to open, we're not dictating what it is. We just go out to the community and look for where the biggest demand is. And then we'll say, this is what we're thinking the next bounty should be. What does everyone think? So really, we try and be led by the community for this. So if you have something or some things that you really want to see in RISC OS, have the conversations there in our forums where we can dig through them and find them as we come to the next point where we're looking to open a bounty. And there's one final thought I want to leave you with, is we have at RISC OS Open been thinking about our role in the community, our role in helping to coordinate. And we've also been thinking about the bounty scheme as well, and the successes there and the things that haven't gone the way we hoped. And we've been thinking, is there something else that we can do in the future? that may be different to that. And we have got some ideas, and we've been narrowing them down over the last year or so. And I'm not going to say what those ideas are, but I will just observe that there are some very big ticket items that RISC OS is needing to happen to keep it relevant and to keep it working into the future. And those big ticket items all feel significantly larger and more complex than our bounty scheme can support. If we were to hope that these things could be addressed through a bounty, they would be collecting for the next 30 years before they reach the target. So the main thing we're thinking at RISC OS Open is we want to change the way we approach the world in general in order to find ways to connect larger sums of money with larger pieces of action in terms of RISC OS development. And I think that's somewhere we want to focus a lot more of our attention going forwards. The bounties are great, but we can see from other companies in the RISC OS community, there's also some great features and great development happening there. And some of these things that we class as bounty scale pieces of work are actually happening quite well in the community already. But what we don't see is the huge monolithic things happening. So someone somewhere has to try and make those things happen. And we think maybe we can have a part to play in that. So just a final thought there. And 2 minutes, I'll just speak for 2 more minutes so no one can ask any questions. Go on, questions. Anyone got any questions? Hello.
Microphone, please.
Oh, microphone.
I'm guessing those two things are multi-core and 64-bit. So, based on that, is there a way that RISC OS or RISC OS Limited could employ somebody? If we all, not to bring out, bring in ways of doing things, but if we all club together.
So, yes and no. So I wouldn't want RISC OS Open to become an employer. I wouldn't want to change our fundamental position as being a not-for-profit. We're a community-driven organisation. It's just a collective of people who want to see good things happen to RISC OS. However, that's not to say we can't have a part to play in connecting a client or group of clients who have money with a supplier, as in a software engineer, who might want to have a long-term contract that might take a year, 2 years, 3 years, or perhaps a team of contractors working on a project. That's the only way you can do some of these pieces of work, is you need a team, 2, 3, 5 people for a year, 2 years. And when you run the numbers on that, they're big numbers. And so it's about finding a particular class of people and entities to supply the funding and putting in place the right structure to give them the trust and the faith that their money is not going to be lost and wasted, and to give the right developers the confidence that they're going to be paid at the end of the day for all of their hard work, and that everyone else is going to get the outcome that they're looking for from the work. So no, we're not planning on becoming an employer and hiring a load of engineers. But yes, we do think we can do more to find ways to get engineers connected to people who can pay them. One more? One more question? Brilliant. I've answered everything. Thank you. Thank you very much.